Fellow Rotarians, honored guests, after a short break, the Rotary Spotlight is back. Now this month we have a very special story to share as the July 2022 Seattle Rotary Spotlight Member of the Month is Todd Summerfelt, classification retired legal services. There are so many reasons that Todd's story is special. One of them is the fact that parts of his story are so relatable to so many of his fellow Rotarians. And let's start here with this fancy-dancy new one. Of course, they gave me a new clicker. Let's see. There we go. See, Todd is a true Washingtonian. He was born in 1954 in Edmonds, Washington. Now, in 1954, Edmonds was really nothing more than a forest and a small village of shops in a once vibrant mill working town. In fact, Todd's father, Earl, was a mill worker by trade. It was he who would ultimately shut down the last two working lumber mills in Seattle. Now here he is sharing Todd's first beer with him, you know. That's a father-son tradition. It was the only way, I think, that they could get Todd to wear that weird little hat he's wearing, but, you know, it worked. You know, as he grew up, you could see Todd was a beautiful baby and a young boy. Yeah, had he been born a little bit earlier, he could have given the Gerber baby or the Sonny Jim kid a real run for their money, but unfortunately, he wasn't. Todd's mother, Dolores, was a homemaker who ran the household and raised the three children. You see, Todd had an older brother named Trev, a younger sister named Tammy. That meant, you got it, Todd was the challenged middle child. Yeah. That could be, well, what led to his extremely strong work ethic. Both of Todd's parents were very adventurous. Todd's childhood was filled with family trips of hiking, fishing, camping, and a love of our beautiful Northwest outdoors. You know, Todd had that blue-collar childhood which enriched his work ethic but limited a lot of his activities. So as he had to start working at a local gas station while still in high school. But even with that commitment, Todd found time in high school for baseball, wrestling, and was even on the debate team. After graduating from Woodway High School, Todd applied for and was accepted to the University of Washington. He was the first in his family to go to college. In his freshman year, he rode on the crew team, but he had to drop out so he could devote time to studies and work. Todd put himself through college by working at the gas station and living at home. Can you believe it? At this time, tuition at the University of Washington was $144 a quarter. Quite a difference from the $2,500 a quarter it is today. But Todd was able to do that. He was determined to not only be the first in his family to go to college, he wanted to be the first in his family to graduate from college. And in 1976, he realized that dream. He graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in accounting. Now, as great as all that sounds, remember, he graduated in 1976. Remember 1976? Well, the last person leaving Seattle, please turn out the lights. Even the person giving Todd's commencement speech was discouraged about the future. Jobs were few and far in between for college grads, but then they weren't Todd Summerfelt, no. He applied at Deloitte Touche, and to his amazement, they hired him as an auditor. And you want to know why? They were so impressed by this kid's blue-collar upbringing and his commitment to being successful, they just had to have him as part of his team. So they brought him into the auditing team. Now, auditing isn't the most exciting life, but it didn't take long before Todd was recruited to the tax team. And one of the clients really took a liking to Todd. They pulled him aside and they offered him a job as their CFO. This was an ad agency called Kraft Smith, owned by none other than Rotarians Don Kraft and Hugh Smith. Now, it's not every day that someone offers you a CFO position. So Todd jumped at it. Now, a little perspective here. This is 1980. The era of the ad agency madmen was still in full force. Drinking at lunch, heavy drinking at dinner. Hell, there was even drinking at breakfast. Life was fast, creative, exciting, and hard. And Todd loved it. But then it was only 3 years later that a really tall guy named Bill Gates Sr. gave him a call and offered him the role of COO at Scheidler, McBroom and Gates, one of the top law firms in the city. Well, of course, Todd said yes. And like clockwork, it was just another 3 years later that an up-and-coming firm by the name of Carney Bradley Spellman offered him the same position at their firm with new challenges and more opportunity. The firm was growing at a remarkable rate, so Todd said yes. And he realized he had a habit of jumping jobs every 3 years, so he had no idea how long he was going to stay there. And he stayed for 35 years. He joined the firm in 1986. It was the beginning of many different phases for law firms. Phases include the imperialistic money phase, the ethics, business-based phase to the service phase and finally to the family values phase. Todd led his firm through all these phases with the right amount of guidance only a true leader knows how to extend. Now, I ran through all of his business experience here a little fast, so I missed a few key events. Back in those Mad Men days, Evans Craft, Todd went to a lot of parties because, well, that's what they do in the advertising business, they party. And at one particular party, Todd had brought a date. It was not going well. And he noticed this beautiful woman across the room. She was on a date too, and it wasn't going well for her either. And so Todd was smitten. He was smitten with a huge smit. He asked around, and a mutual friend introduced them that evening until Todd went over and asked this gal, Jane, on a date. But Jane was not interested. She said, thanks anyway, have a good life. I travel a lot. I'm way too busy to add someone to my life. And dang, she didn't even offer up the Let's Be Friends consolation prize. Nothing. Well, persistent Todd continued to call Jane, but nothing worked. No response, not interested. So finally, Todd thought, well, I need to face the facts. He backed off. He accepted that Jane was just not ever going to be interested in a man like him. You fast forward a few weeks, and Jane wakes up from a dream. She's dreaming about none other than that Todd Summerfelt guy. And in her dream, a voice asks, what if that was the guy? And she freaks out by this. So she calls Todd and says, if you're still interested. Todd interrupts her and says, still interested? Still interested? I never stopped. So Jane suggests a casual, low-risk lunch. And that lunch lasted 3 hours, and from that day forward, every time she was in town, they were together. That lasted 3 months. Todd proposed. Jane said yes. 4 months later, they were married in April 1982, and this year they celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary. Wow. Todd and Jane have 3 children. Their oldest is a son named Dan. He works in the online social media services. Middle child is a daughter named Ellen. She works for Kaiser Permanente. And the youngest child is a daughter named Janet who works at the Seattle Aquarium. These are great kids. They've grown up to be great adults in large part due to the great childhood provided by Todd and Jane. They grew up enjoying the great outdoors and the great Pacific Northwest. And music has always played a big part in Todd's life. It's always been a big part of the kids' life as they grew up. And in addition, the family has traveled the world. They've been introduced to those kids to exotic locations that most of us never even see until our adult life, if we're lucky. Now, another family for Todd is his Rotary family. Back in the 80s, as Todd was getting involved in the Seattle business community, he asked Don Kraft and Hugh Smith about Rotary. Well, these 2 past presidents encouraged Todd, and on July 24th, 1985, 37 years ago this month, Todd Summerfelt joined Seattle Rotary. And besides numerous committee positions, Todd held the highest position in our club. He became club president 2003-2004. In those years, Seattle Rotary was the largest Rotary club in the world. It was a world stage, and the spotlight that shined on our club was very bright. Todd was the consummate leader. Those were some of the most remarkable meetings in our club history, and Todd did it without anyone ever feeling like someone was managing them or telling them what to do. That was Todd's style. In March of 2020, Todd retired to spend more time at their property on Camano Island, boating, crabbing, and being with Jane. Unfortunately, about 18 months ago, Todd noticed his belly was becoming distended, so he went to see the doctor. The doctor noticed an accumulation of fluid in Todd's stomach, so he took a sample. The sample was full of cancer cells. Todd had terminal cancer of the appendix, and the doctor gave him 6 to 12 months to live. Now, if you're like me, I didn't know what to say next. There's so many similarities in Todd's life to many of our lives, especially my own. For a minute there, I selfishly think of my own life for a microsecond. I think, what if that was my diagnosis? I gathered up my courage. I asked Todd, what did you think? What did you say? What was going on in your mind? Todd told me he's always been a really positive person his entire life. He always looks for the good in every piece of news. So his first reaction was gratitude and happiness. Gratitude and happiness, because he had had such a great life. He experienced all the wonders of the Pacific Northwest, his beautiful wife, his wonderful kids, his great jobs, all his friends. He thought, what if he got this news and he didn't have all those things? Think how sad that would have been. And Todd also wanted to tell me, he told his team of doctors he didn't want a plan to just keep him living. He wanted a plan to give him life. Life is not laying in a bed with tubes and machines. He wanted to be out in the world with family and friends. Now, even if that time is shorter, it's better. Keep in mind, Todd was given 6 to 12 months to live. That was 18 months ago. Must be doing something right. You know, when Todd was given his cancer diagnosis, he didn't take that as a death sentence. He took it as a life sentence. And when I see the courage this man possesses, I am so inspired. Fellow Rotarians, with great admiration, I give you our Rotary Spotlight Member of the Month for July 2022, Todd Summerfelt, classification, retired legal.
Thank you, John. I appreciate everything you had to say, both what you included and what you omitted. Just two quick thank yous. First, thank you to Don Kraft for sponsoring me into this club 37 years ago. Thanks, Don, even though you always said it was Hugh's idea. My other thanks goes out to every member over the 37 years who has enriched the fellowship, come alongside me as friends, and served together. I love this Rotary Club, and I love all of you. Thanks so much.
John, thank you. We're grateful for you sharing such special stories about our members. And Todd, we are so happy that we could celebrate you today.